I'm going to show you how to create client front ends for your automations in minutes instead of spending hours on complex custom solutions like Lovable. I've built over 150 client-facing automation systems, and the biggest complaint that I've always received is about the lack of a nice interface and the ease of use or lack of ease of use, especially when a client is not technical. But using the method I'm going to show you today, you'll be able to produce great front ends for your clients in less time, allowing you to spend more time on the actual automations. And in this video, I'm going to show you step by step how to build the start of a complete SEO automation system with a clean, professional interface that your clients will love without writing a single line of code or spending days on the design. So let's get started with seeing what we're actually going to be building today. And if you're looking for the template I display in this demo, then check out the school community link in the description. So we are building out an SEO system that can effectively pull together and help any company do all of their SEO work, but automate the lot. So this is the starting point of it, in which we have this overview of different information that we are, or different automations that we are showing for a client. So imagine you are a client that runs several companies. You'd effectively use this as your dashboard to manage the SEO, all the keywords, all the blog posts, etc., for your several different companies. Or you could be an agency that services multiple companies, and this would work in exactly the same. Or this could just be for your one company, and you could use this exactly the same, but just for your single company. So we have this overview page where we've got two different sub pages. We've got company information and keywords. So you can see it's all very clean. And if I go to company information, we effectively have a page for each different company. So if you're an agency, you'd have all your different companies listed here. This would show you all of the different information that we've completed manually. So we've got a company name, the website URL, and LinkedIn. And what we can do is actually, we can just add a company here. So let's use n8n as an example, and we'll put in n8n.io, and then we'll go and find LinkedIn for n8n.io. And we're effectively getting their company LinkedIn page. We're going to take that and we're going to put that back into the form. And that is all the information that I'm going to need to actually activate the automations on the back end. So I'm adding a new company record here. I'm going to hit create. And what that's going to do is actually add that record down here. And you can see that that's just populated there. We've then got all of these different fields, which we'll show you in the database in the back end in a minute. But we've effectively got generate info, generate keywords, and that should be a checkbox, which we'll sort out in a second. And what it's going to do is help us grab that company information. So it's going to go to Perplexity and it's going to search based on the website URL, the name, and the LinkedIn, and actually pull the information for what product they offer, who are their ideal customer profile, what are their pain points and challenges, their key goals and objectives, and how do they currently solve their problems. So all information we can use later down the line in our copy, on the website, in our blog posts, in our keyword usage. All that information is going to really help with our SEO strategy and the topics that we target for the different blog posts. We've then got a keyword sheet here, and you can see that this is auto collapsed all the information per company. But you can see for Automake and Zapier here, Automake is my own agency, but we've got 20 keywords that we are ranking for at the moment. And we pull that information from data for SEO, which we'll talk about how to connect this all up in a moment. But you can see if you're managing multiple companies, then you have these really nice, easy to use interfaces where I can see, okay, for my company Automate, I'm ranking for all of these different terms at the moment. And therefore, maybe my keyword strategy should be around how do I find topic clusters that target these keywords and keywords or long tail keywords that are relevant to these keywords as well. And it gives us things like competition, the volume, the cost per click, and the keyword difficulty. And you can see we are ranking for some really good keywords in here. And the same as Zapier, you can see for that company, we have all of the different keyword terms. And at the moment, I've just limited it to 20, but you could see every single keyword and have that in this nice, easy, collapsible use. So now that we've added n8n, what we can do is actually go in and generate info, and that's going to go and grab all of these different things. So I'll just do that to show you now. In the back end, whenever we click the button, it's going to run this first workflow. So I'm going to just put it in test mode at the moment, and we are waiting for the test URL to be called, and that's going to send a webhook. So for n8n, I want it to generate all of this different ICP information. So we're going to click generate info. I'm going to go back to the workflow, and that's going to hopefully activate this workflow, which is going to do the ICP research based on the LinkedIn URL, the website, and the name, and it's going to update those records in there for us. And what we're going to need to do whilst the automation is off is go into the automations up here, select a record, and we'll click n8n. And if we run that automation, that will now send the webhook, and you will see that start running through here and doing the research. That will then do all that research, return it in a structured way. So we've got product description, customer profile, pain points and challenges, goals and objectives and solutions, and that will update back in the backend database. And actually then we will be able to see the company information become complete here. And actually that's all populated for us. But And you can see it's all coming now. And you can see from a client point of view that actually all of this information is still editable. So if I actually wanted to update this information, I don't have to deal with the clunky automations or even the data view itself, which is often quite overwhelming for clients. I can hide whatever information and put only the relevant information in a really nice interface that they can come and interact with here. And the same with generate keywords. If I wanted to grab the keyword information, it would activate another webhook here. And that's the second workflow that's running in the background, which receives the webhook, uses data for SEO, which we'll cover, to get the keywords that we're ranking for and updates those back. But the client doesn't see any of this. So we're going to test this workflow. We're going to go to the same. We're going to go to back to the data. We're going to go to the automations and we're going to generate keywords. And whilst this is off, whilst we're testing, we're going to just go test automation, select the n8n record. And the reason that's not working is because we need to pre-select the box that's generate keywords in here. So if we go back to automations, we'll test the automation, we'll select the record and we'll select n8n. And once that's run, that will now start and activate this second workflow that's activated by webhook here. That's going to generate the keywords. It's going to pull all the keywords that they're ranking for, so 1,881. But actually all we're interested in here for this example is the 20 most relevant keywords that they're ranking for. So we can start to tailor our SEO strategy around that. So if we go back to the interfaces, and this is what the client would see, you'd effectively go to n8n and you can see, if we go to keywords, that we've now got n8n and all the words that they're ranking for, all the top 20 words that they're ranking for, in a really clean and easy to use interface. As part of the community, I'm going to be expanding this template to create a full SEO strategy that goes from the ideal customer profile all the way through to blog content and other forms of content that all interlink with each other. We're going to take this inside the community and actually expand this into a full SEO system for any company that wants to implement a really nice and easy to use friendly interface for their SEO strategy. So we'll go from all the way from the ideal customer profile, which we'll show you today, getting the primary keywords that we want to target, converting those into long tail keywords, and then actually creating topical clusters from which we will start to write AI generated but human-like sounding blog content, all the way to actually interlinking between different blogs and making sure that that is published and updated on our website every single day. But for this demonstration, I just want to show you how to build out these really nice interfaces in Airtable, both the front end and how to connect it to the back end as well. And if you want access to all of this pre-built for you, including the automations and the Airtable base, then you can access it inside the school community in the description. So the first thing you're going to need to do whenever you set up any Airtable interface is actually set up some mock data. So you can see, as we've been filling these out, on the front end, we've got this company information, which displays really nicely for Automake, for n8n, for Zapier. But what it's really doing is just pulling from our table format in the back end. So if I was to set up a new company, I could either do it as if I was a client using the interface up here. So I'm going to add a company in here, or I could do it directly into the database. So when you're first setting this up, you're not going to have this interface pre-built out. So what you're going to need to do is actually set this up yourself and set up the different fields. So I've just created some generic fields here for company information. So we've got company name, website URL, and company LinkedIn, which are the fields that I would want a client to manually fill out. I've then got a tick box, which we're going to link to our webhook. So that is, as soon as it's ticked, it's going to activate our webhook, and I'll show you how to set that up. And then all of these fields are our outputs that are going to be populated by automation in the backend. And what we've done here is effectively linked to different records. So I'll show you how to create the links between different records. And what that's going to enable us to do is effectively come into the keywords here, is actually group them by different company here. So if we wanted to link or group in certain ways, then we're going to need to understand how to use this link between different tables that we have. And then finally, we have another checkbox, which I added at a later stage for the keywords. So you need to set up this information in the table here. And then I'd recommend adding one test row inside the workbook here. I always like to include a record ID column. And the way I do that is actually just to put a formula field, and inside the formula put record ID. And what that does is just enable to me, when I'm testing it inside n8n, to actually understand which record I'm dealing with. It's a nice, quick, easy way to see the record ID, which is an auto assigned ID inside Airtable, but you can't traditionally see it, but you can see it as soon as you pull a record inside your Airtable. If I zoom in here, we can effectively see the record ID pass back, and I can see without any more information here that this is so. If I go to the keywords and we added a record ID field, so we add a formula, we add a record ID, and it auto populates down there. Look, we close the brackets, we create the field, and we'll rename that record ID. And if I go back to the company here, I can see that without even looking at the details, I can see that we were dealing with this record here, i.e. n8n, in the last run, which we know we were because that's what we demonstrated before. So once you have a data table, what you're going to do is open up the interfaces. And when you come in here to create a new interface, it's going to ask you to effectively add pages to that interface. So you're going to have a view that looks exactly like this. And these are pages that I've created by myself, but we're going to recreate them now. And what I'd do is up here on create a new page or interface, one, we'd add a new interface, and then under multiple interfaces, but right now we're just dealing with one interface with multiple pages. So if I add a page, we've got all of these different layouts that we can view information in. And we're actually today going to show you the list layout, which is how we've displayed effectively like the table format, but in a cleaner way, which was all of our keywords. We can have a gallery. So say we were later creating blog posts, we could have each blog post in this gallery style view that I click into. We could have a drag drop, a Kanban board, calendar, timeline. We could even have a new form, which then activates a certain automation. You could have a dashboard, which displays all of the SEO information or analytics from the website, for example. And then we are going to use the overview. So what we've done in the overview is just effectively create a front end page for the client to come into and click on the different sub pages, and the record review, which just gives us a really clean way to display information from an individual record, which we're going to use for our company. So inside overview, if we click finish here, you'll see that it effectively opens up this page, and it will auto populate actually these different bookmarks, which are the different sub pages we've got. So we've got the automate SEO sub page, and I can click into here and it will take me to that page. And you can see it's taken me to that page. If I go back to the overview, we've got all of these different pages. And what we can do is effectively write, this is for an overview, individual company rows and relevant keywords. So it's just a description in here that if you're building it for a client, they'd immediately know from this page what those mean, and they could click into those sub pages. We can also add some about links and other resources, but what we can do is actually customize it on the right hand side here really easily. And we can click on this. If we click on any element, it allows us to edit it directly on the right. And what we can do is just hide the sidebar for this example. And we're going to end up with something like the Automate SEO page, where we just have the overview or the Automate SEO. And that is effectively our first page. We're able to add a cover image, add a logo, etc. here, but we're just going to keep it nice and simple. It's just basically a home page to click on the different pages. So I'll drag that. And we can also create pages that we just hide from navigation, for example. And then any that need publishing will appear with this blue dot here, or this dot that matches your background. And by the way, quick tip on this, you can actually customize the colors on Airtable itself. So if you go up to the bar up here, you can actually choose the different colors and you can see everything changes accordingly. You can change the icon up here as well. So we're going to just hide that from the navigation right now. And then what we're going to do is replicate this company info page. So we're going to create a new page. And like I said, we want to do a record review. And this enables us to review details of many records from one table. So it gives us an individual view. So say you had people information, you'd have a big table of people information with all their different images, their start dates, who their manager was, so a linked record. This enables you to actually go down this list and view it instead of in a table format, which if I go back to the data would look a lot like this, which is not very user-friendly. You could see it in a much cleaner format. So we're going to do that for our company information. So you select the company up here. You can pre-filter and sort information, but actually we're not going to do that here. We're just going to go to next. And then it's going to say, what information do we actually want to show on this page? So what we want to do is show the company name, URL, LinkedIn, and actually we're going to include all this information. And you can see on the right-hand side, it populates what that information would look like for us. We will not show the keyword linking. We will not show the record ID because that's irrelevant for the user, but we will show the generate keywords tick box. And what we will call this is company information V2. And now you can see it's effectively pre-populated with this different company information. And I can click through each of these and I can scroll down on the right-hand side. If I just hide this pages here, it gives me a much cleaner view of what it would actually look like. And what I'm able to see as a client on this, if I preview it as the client would see up here, you effectively have different company information and all of these things down here. But what we want to do is make it really readily accessible and easily editable where we can for the client. So I'm going to take it off preview mode. And what we're going to need to do is actually click on each of these boxes here. And all we're going to do is just give editable permissions. And you can see if I go back to preview that the product description is now entirely editable. And that will update it both in the table because these are linked and the interface itself. So this gives the client the ultimate power whilst also not overwhelming them with too much information. So any information that we want to publish, we'd have to go publish up here and we'd click publish. And now that would be available in the dashboard itself. So I can act as if I'm a client coming in here. And you can see that we've got one editable field and the rest are not editable. So we'll go back and we will make those editable now. Go to edit pages and we'll just click down all of the different fields. And we want to make all of these entirely editable, apart from the notes, of which is an automated field here. But everything else we actually want to make editable. And we can even change the appearance of these if we wanted to, or add some helper text, etc. So if I preview it, you can now see all of the different information and fields are completely editable here. But if I was a client, I'd want to be able to add rows without having to go back to the data and actually add these as rows. So we can enable that as well. We take it off preview mode and we click on this dashboard over here. We can also customize this completely. So right now it's showing the company name and it's also showing the status. If we wanted to get rid of status and keep it nice and clean like that, then we'd add there. If we wanted to add the website URL, then we could do that there as well. Some really important things from a client's point of view might be actually exporting information as CSV. So you can see the drop down appears up here when we do that, and that enables the client to export that data. We also want to enable them to print this data if they want to. So actually making it really user friendly for them. But as well as that, we want them to add records through a form, which adds this plus icon. And if we click on the form here, it's something I've pre-created already. But what we can do is effectively create the form up here. We can call this whatever we want. We can add a description. And all we've got in this case is them inputting a company name, a website URL, and a LinkedIn exactly as you saw before. And if I wanted to, I could add more information that's manually input, or a new field even that's manually input by the user there. So we've set up the first bit of information, which is this company information, where we effectively want to input a few things and then generate that information automatically using an automation at the back end, or so our clients can just tick a button and an automation fires off on their behalf. So they can create new records as we've seen before, exactly like this. And let's use a new company as example, and let's go to relevanceai.com, and we will run through this example exactly how you'd create it. And let's get their LinkedIn profile as well, as then Perplexity is able to search that for us. So we put in that information. So very minimal information. We're going to create that new company, and then that will appear on our list. And we're just going to have to publish to actually then do that properly. So now you can see it's populated in our list. And what we're going to need to do now is actually set up the automation so that when we hit the generate info button or checkbox, it actually generates the information for us and activates our webhook, so that when we're ticking that, it's actually going to do something. So the way that we do that is first, we actually set up the automation in the background. So I've pre-set up this, and this is available as a downloadable template inside the school. But effectively, we're going to set up a webhook here. And right now, this just has a path of demo interface. And what we're going to do is use this in test mode. And we're going to set up now an automation in Airtable that connects to this webhook. So for now, let's just disconnect it so that we can confirm that we have actually connected it. And then we'll run over what we're actually doing with the information. But you can see this is inactive because we're going to do it in test mode. And this is a recent update from n8n, but you can now choose which trigger we want to execute from. So we're going to put that into test mode. And now that's just going to sit in a waiting position, waiting for a get request to that test mode. But actually, let me just stop listening. And I just need to copy that URL there by clicking on it, and we'll put it back into that test mode. We'll go back to our automations. And what we're going to need to do is go back to view data, and we're going to go into automations up here, and we're going to create a new automation. So we're going to add an automation here. Just need to refresh the page, and we will say generate company info v2. And that's just so I know that what I'm doing there. And what we're going to do is say that when a record matches a condition, and we're going to say inside our company table. So if you remember in here, we've got this company table. We're going to say that when generate info is ticked, then we want to send a webhook. So the way we do that is say that inside the company table, and we just add a condition exactly like we would inside n8n. When generate info is ticked, then we will take this next action. So we will add advanced logical action. And sadly at the moment, Airtable doesn't have a built-in function to send webhooks, but there's a very easy workaround, which is running a script inside here. And what we're going to do is go back to the canvas in here, and I've put the webhook script, which is exactly the same every single time, inside a little note here. So we're going to copy that. We're going to bring that inside, and we're going to replace it inside here. And we will run through exactly what this means now, but we're effectively saying that we want to send a webhook to a certain address, and we're going to append to it a record ID and potentially any other information that we want to use later to filter it. So at the moment, I've just put this as any information, and you can add whatever you want here. You can call it absolutely anything, but the point is you can pass any other information from the record that you want to. And what we need to do is just say, actually, we need to access the properties of the record row. So what we're going to say is let config, and it's commonly called config, equal input.config. And that's just something that is told to us here. That's going to be the same every time. And what we're saying is, okay, fetch from a webhook address, send to a webhook address with this record ID appended to it and any other information. So this question mark record ID is just appending the record ID to the webhook that we're sending. And all we need to do then is effectively tell the automation what the webhook config.webhook is, what the config.record ID is, and what the config.any information is. So in the inputs down here, we can effectively put dynamic variables. So we will put webhook down here. We'll then put record ID, and you need to make sure these are spelled in exactly the same way with the same capital letters. And we will put any information. And let's just put this as test value to show you how it comes through in the automation. The record ID, we're able to hit the plus icon here, and we're actually just able to insert the Airtable record ID here. And you can see that you could add any information from the row as well to that. And then inside the webhook address, we're just going to go back to the automation. We're going to come inside here, and we're going to copy in the test URL to the webhook value inside here. And once we finish testing, we need to activate our workflow, and we need to put in the production URL. But for now, whilst we're testing, we're just going to use the test URL here. So once that's ready to test, we can come back here and we can listen for a test event. And what we will do is just run test here, and it will ask us to select a value. Now you'll need to make sure that we've got a value that meets the condition. So if you don't already have that, you need to make sure that there's a row inside here with this box ticked, and that will show up there. So let's get, because we want to do it for Relevance AI, our new one, I've just ticked that, and on another tab here, it's automatically updated to say this is now met our condition. So we're going to test it on Relevance AI. And all that's going to do right now is actually, if we go back to our n8n workflow, is it's sent that webhook. And you can see in the information it's passed the record ID, which allows us to pull the information from Airtable, and it's passed our any information or our test value field here. So that is a success. We've correctly pulled the record there. I'm just going to pin that to save having to test it every single time. The rest of the automation is bog standard n8n workflow stuff. So we're going to get the record from Airtable, and we're going to pull from the correct base, the correct table, and we're going to pull the record ID, which was passed in the query, as you saw. And then I've added an additional stage in here, which is actually often when I've been working with clients, they need some sort of way to not overwrite the information by accident. So if they unticked generate info and ticked it again, it would rewrite over this information, which is not good, because often you actually have done that by accident and you don't want to rewrite the information that's already been created, because this is going to change your results. So we have this status, which starts as incomplete. So if we go to Relevance AI, it'll be incomplete. But as soon as the automation runs, we update the record at the end, which says actually the status is complete. So we only perform the actions if the status is incomplete, which is what this if node is. And if it is complete already and somebody's tried to rerun this, then it will actually throw some notes into this box, which is the add notes here, that says this is already complete, and then gives them instructions on how to actually run this if they meant to try and overwrite the data. So now it's all connected up. We can see that it only runs for incomplete records to stop the client overwriting things. And we've just attached an AI agent here, which has access to Perplexity. We've put the inputs here of company name, company URL, and company LinkedIn URL. And let's just activate this again and run it through so you can see the different outputs from here. And this is going to actually now generate that information and populate it down here in product description, who are the ICP any moment now, and change this to complete. And you can see it's gone away and populated that information. By the looks of it, it's actually grabbed, Perplexity has grabbed the wrong information. So, we could go in here and actually update the prompt to make sure that this is better, but the process is still exactly the same. What we might want to do is actually just change this to incomplete, rerun that again, and that will now overwrite the information, hopefully with more correct and relevant information that's being used in the Perplexity node. So the Perplexity tool is something that's just been implemented in the latest update of n8n, but we've effectively got a tool to go and do LLM web research on here. And what we're doing is passing in a search query. And then in our main prompt, we've effectively given it these different inputs and said, actually, you should go and conduct research using the inputs and then pull back information that answers the questions around ICP, pain points and challenges, key goals and objectives, etc. And you can see now that we've run it again, it's actually populated all the correct information this time. So Perplexity's got it right this time. But from a client point of view, they don't see any of the backend automation. They just click generate info, and then that's all set up for them. Now we're going to take a look at how to instead build out this row level view. We're instead going to have multiple records that link to a single company, and that would be in a list view. So what we do is, to set this up from scratch, we go into edit pages again. We would go to the pages interface, and what we're going to do is add a new page. And like I mentioned before, we're going to use this list view, which gives us a really clean table looking view that we can group and link back to our individual companies. So let's open up a new list. And again, we've got the same thing. We can have a list, but it has to have a backend table that it links to. So in our backend, what we've done is create a keywords table, which effectively has a keyword that we want to, a keyword that a website is ranking for. So primary keyword, what date it was pulled. And then we pull metrics using our automation for competition, volume, cost per click, keyword difficulty. And then what we're doing is having a linked record. So to create this linked field, you just need to go into Airtable, create this data type of link to another record, and then tell it which table you want it to link to. So we're going to say we're going to want to link to the company table, and I'll just call this link version 2. And what we're going to do is just allow it to link to multiple records here. But if I clicked in there and I was doing it manually, what I'd be able to do is effectively see the company records from the company table and actually click on here which one that this row pertains to. But we can automate that whole process so that it automatically populates whenever we want keywords for a specific company and website. It'll pull the record and automatically link them all up for us. So let's see exactly how we do that now. Let's just delete this field to keep it clean. And what we're going to do is populate the Relevance AI keywords as well in here. So we've got the backend database that's going to feed a table. And now effectively that was the keywords list. So you can see that this will appear as a keywords list like this. And if I preview this as a client would see it, you can see it's just a big jumble of all the different keywords now. It's not pre-grouped for us. So what we can do is come off the preview here. And again, we can allow certain options like exporting data, adding records through a form, but this time the automation is populating all of the information. So we don't want to allow them to add records through a form. We can have different tabs where we can view different groups of information and create those as well. But now we're going to keep it simple here as well. And if we click on the main table here, it will give us the chance to actually choose which fields are visible. So in this case, we actually want all of these hidden fields to be visible. Not sure why it's not letting me do that. So let me go down. All of these hidden fields we actually want inside there. Company we can bring in for now, and then we will hide afterwards. And we don't want record ID again showing the customer, but now we can see all of those different fields, including the company there. And if we want to group it, we can hit the group icon up here and just hit company in there. And that's going to pre-group all of this information by company. And we can change the look and layout of the table. If we wanted to make it really narrow like this, we could do that. And if we wanted to make it clean, like because we have lots of different companies in here, we'd make it collapse by default. And there we have it. We have exactly the same keywords table as we had before, and we can expand those different keywords. We could even do things like color them by keyword difficulty. So say when keyword difficulty is, we go in here, keyword difficulty contains medium, we might want to color them red. And on the left-hand side of the rows, we can now see the medium keyword difficulties are red or yellow, etc. Much in the same way as I've done in the previous table. But what we want is to allow the client to actually produce these records and see these keywords. And then in future, what we'll do is create things on top of this that actually automations from these specific keywords that open up new pages like long tail keywords, blog writing, etc. But for now, we're just enabling them from this company information sheet. Say we wanted to do it for Relevance AI to actually generate those keywords. So we're going to jump back to the automation where we make that happen now, but it has to come from this company information because we need to link the keywords back to the company record. So remember when we were in the different tables here, when we've linked these companies here, we're effectively saying, okay, link it back to this record. And that allows us to group it in the way that we have here with the different drop-down categories inside there. So let's jump back to the automation. And in exactly the same way, we set up the webhook. So we have a different test URL here, which is demo/keywords. We would go to automations. And in the same way, we would add a new trigger, which is when the generate keywords is checked, we're going to run a script. And you guessed it, if we go into the run a script here and we go into the code of the script, it's done in exactly the same way. So we've added the webhook value there, the record ID, and any other information we want to pass, in which case we've left this blank because there's no additional information. And if we wanted to test that, we would go to test automation, we'd select a record, but again, we haven't remembered to tick the box on relevance.ai. So if we go back to the company sheet and what we're trying to do is test the generate keywords record, I need to remember to come back to the automation and listen for a test event. And then what we're going to do is go back to the automation. It now appears up here and that's going to run. We'll go back to the automation and run through node by node exactly what that's doing. But what that's going to do is populate, hopefully, our records. So for some reason, it hasn't run the whole thing, but what we'll do is just pin that data and we can see that it's sent the record ID of the company. And this is really important for when we link it back later to this node. And what we're going to do here is effectively execute from webhook 1. That's going to get the records exactly the same way in which we did before. And then we're going to use a really powerful tool, which I'll show you in a second, called Data for SEO, which is going to obtain all of our SEO search information. And there's a ton of endpoints that we can use and we will use to build out the rest of this system. But like I said, we're just going to pull the top 20 keywords we're ranking for and use those as our primary keywords to form our SEO strategy. We're going to split those out and then add them back to Airtable. So we're going to execute that. And from the client's point of view, all they would do would be to actually click inside the company information, tick the generate keywords box, and then all the keywords would populate inside here for Relevance AI. And you can see it's already run that. And it's given our different keywords in here, the competition, the volume, the cost per click, etc. So that's worked really effectively and that's updated. Let's have a quick look at how to set up Data for SEO and what it actually is. So it is effectively all the information you need via API for doing your keyword research and various other things around SEO data. You can see that you get $1 free and it's quite confusing in terms of the pricing, but actually for running a webhook that returns 750 items here, it's going to cost me about 8 cents. So not a huge amount. And they've got various different endpoints which cost different amounts, but none of them are very expensive and it's super easy to use. So if you're investing in your SEO strategy, then it's definitely worth the output. And you can see inside the products here, they have all sorts of information like keyword data APIs, backlinks API, on-page APIs, social media APIs. So they have a huge amount of SEO information all in one place, really easy to use. And we'll show you how to set that up. So once you've created an account, you need to effectively go to the API dashboard here and you get $1 free to try out. So you'll be able to run these. And if I go into the HTTP request request here, we're effectively using this single endpoint, which is actually pulling the keywords data using Google Ads as a source. And it's just telling us what keywords we're already ranking for. We'll run over how to set up the authorization in a moment. I'm also going to remove my API key, and we can make that safer by putting it in authentication. And then what we're doing is just putting in the target website and ranking those outputs by relevance. And then later we're splitting out those items so that we just have each individual keyword in the table. And we're just taking the top 20 so we can see which ones should form our primary keyword strategy here. So in terms of setting up this HTTP request, everything else is very straightforward, but this is slightly more complex. When you traditionally use authentication for APIs, you often just have an API key. It's a little bit different for data for SEO. So what you're going to need to do is go to your API access page. It's going to tell you an API login and an API password. And then if we go to data for SEO authentication, it will give us a little bit more information, but I'll show you how to do it. We basically need to put in a header authorization with the word basic, and then we need to encode our login and password. So what we've just seen is our login and password here. We just go to a base64 encode. And what I'm going to do here is effectively take my login. I'm going to put a colon in between those. And then I'm going to take my password. And all I'm going to do is just encode that. It's going to give me a result down here, which I'm going to copy. And I'm going to go back to my HTTP request here. And all I do is effectively just copy that into after the word basic and have the header parameter saying authorization. But if you find the right endpoint that you want to use, so in our case, it was the keywords data API, Google Ads, and it was keywords for site. And you can see there's a ton of different things we could use here, different endpoints, and we can even get search engine results from Google here, which we'll do at a later stage as well. And if you find the relevant endpoint that you want to use and the data that you're happy with, then what you can do is just copy this curl command down to the bottom, and we're going to get rid of the location code because we don't actually, all we want is to put in the target here. We would create a new HTTP request. And as we do with all other API calls where we can, we import the curl up here. Like I said, get rid of the location code there because we want all of them. And it's going to allow us to put in our credentials like we just encrypted and saw there. But that's going to pre-fill all the information. Then all we need to do is effectively drag the correct information, which was our website URL, which was our target, into here. And we'll just make sure that that's in the correct place. And then to make this more secure when we're sharing our workflows, what we'll do is we'll add a header parameter. Let's pretend this is our authentication method. We'll add a generic credential type of header auth. We'll create a new credential in here. We'll call this data for SEO, and we will call this authorization. And we will, if I just turn this to an expression so you can see, I will add basic. Whoops, that's why we do it. And then I would add my or your API key here, the encoded thing that we just had on screen. You'd then save that in there and that would be ready to actually run. I'm not going to save that. I'm going to get rid of that. But what that effectively now does is grab the most relevant or grab all of the key terms or keywords. And you can see there's 749 once we split it out from Google Ads. So it tells us which keywords we're actually ranking for. And this isn't the only endpoint that you can use. There are a ton on Data for SEO and it's really cheap to get that information. And we'll be using more as we build out the system. But what that enables you to do is effectively pull that information and display it in a really clean way so that when your clients are using it, they can actually go through here, or when your business is using it, you can actually see, or your employees, you can see this information in a really clean, easy to use interface. So I hope that all makes sense in how to build out your first Airtable interface. This is actually significantly easier than building on something like Lovable. So I think this is going to be something that I'm going to use more and more as I go forward with my clients and inside my own business to build out these dashboards. And there's so much more inside here that I haven't explored, but what I've seen already is that it's really powerful. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the content, please give it a like and subscribe below. And if you're looking for more exclusive content like this, where we build out systems, as well as all the templates I showed today, then check out the school community in the description.